Alright, so this morning's rant is I was watching some news feed or some shit last night, and he was talking about like the disproportionate, representation of all sorts of things, right? Most of the time, if you hear the word disproportionate in politics, it's usually the left-wing nuts talking about like black people are disproportionately targeted or fucking, all sorts of these other crazy things, right? And that's what they always talk about. And it was funny because the reel I was watching, or the news feed I was watching, I should say, it was over Minnesota, and something that I wasn't aware of. So Minnesota's pretty big. I don't know for a fact, but I think it's like easily top 10 sized states in the country. So it was showing how the entire state voted, right? And it based it off of counties, and it was eye-opening to me because it was like, people want to talk about disproportionate here, and obviously this is going on in Minnesota because all the shit that's going on up there, politically and whatnot, but it was eye-opening to me. So 87% of the state, not 87% of the population, and I got to make that key determination there, but 87% of the state voted red, right? So they did not vote blue. And the remaining 23% of the state, I think it's close to these numbers, but voted blue. And yet the entire state was classified as blue. So, and obviously anybody who's listening to this is going to be like, well, no shit, dumbass. Like, the fucking, majority of the population isn't, equally dispersed across the entire state, right? And I understand that, but this is where that disproportionate comes from, right? Because you think about, that 87% not being represented equally is because only, I think it was 27% of Minnesota population lives in that 87% of land, right? So, in the rest of it is the 73% lives in the fucking big cities, right? Minneapolis, St. Cloud, all of them motherfuckers. So you think about the disproportionate there, right? Like, farmers don't live inside city limits, right? Like, farmers don't usually live inside city limits. They're, got county PO boxes and shit like that. So you got to think about, like, pretty much every single farmer out there, regardless of state, they typically vote red, right? Like, they're all for their gun rights and, God and all of that shit. So, they're typically red. And you think about, all of them lost their vote, right? Like, all of them who voted technically lost their vote. And that comes from the Electoral College, not specifically the Electoral College, but how the Electoral College is handled per state, right? So the entire state is a winner take all, and it turns out that there's actually 48 states that do this, and it's not the lower 48, interesting. The 48 states do the winner take all deal. There's 2 states, I think it's Maine and Nebraska, that don't do winner take all, that their electoral votes actually count towards who their county voted for. So, like, if your, district, not county, I should say, because, districts are way different than counties. But if your district voted red, then in Maine, then they get a fucking red vote. If they voted blue, they get a blue vote. And it happens in only 2 states. So I started researching that part, right? And it turns out that this is not written in the Constitution of the United States. This is something that's determined at a state level. So we have the ability to vote on it in the state level of how our electoral votes are dispersed. And I want you to think about how that would impact the outcomes of, the swing states and stuff. Because right now, the only place, again, this is playing into that disproportionate, like, presidents and, even at the Senate and, obviously the representatives don't do this, but, mostly presidents, when they're on the campaign trail, they don't give a fuck about safe states. Like, they're never, probably, down here in Florida, they're probably never going to have to worry about Florida becoming a fucking blue state. At least for a while, it won't have to worry about this. They're never going to have to worry about, Tennessee or some shit becoming a blue state. But, there's other ones that they do hit, and they're called the swing states. Well, that's because if they can swing it, even by, if they get 50.1% of votes, the whole state goes that color. So if, Minnesota, voted 50.1% red next year, or the next election, not next year, they would automatically change over to a red state. And it's that simple. It's that quick, right? So, but you have to think about the implications behind that, because we're voting for a national position, right? Like, so the president of the United States is not a local position, that's a national position, and we're voting for it. But now, in the winner take all situation, potentially 49.9% of an entire state's population could just be wiped clean. No vote, no nothing, right? Like, it just disappears. And you have to understand, why that's such a fucking problem. Because it's, we'll stay with Minnesota here. Like, you have all these fuckers that live inside the city limits, and most of them probably couldn't fucking grow a potato to save their fucking life. But you better believe that they're going into Sprouts looking for pesticide-free organic fucking potatoes. So, they're sitting here doing all of this, and they expect these things to be all organic and whatnot. But then they don't get the votes for the farmers that need the fucking votes, right? Like, the farmers have completely different perspectives. They have completely different needs. Somebody in inner city is only going to vote based on cost of living. They're going to expect groceries to be a certain, price. They're going to expect rent to be a certain price. They're going to expect access to certain, public transportation. They're going to expect all sorts of things that usually drive the cost of taxes. They drive zoning regulations. They drive, all of these fucking components at the state level. Well, all the farmers don't give a shit about that. The farmer doesn't give a fuck about your fucking, city buses. He doesn't give a fuck about your city trams or these little fucking dumbass scooters that are popping up all over inner cities. And those are things that are paid for by taxes. And meanwhile, farmers are over here like, what the fuck about me, right? Like, what are we giving them? And you also have to think, based on the actual numbers of certain fucking things, right? Like, taxes. We live in a progressive tax system. So, like, 0 through, like, I forget what it is. I think 0 through 30 is taxed. 30K is taxed at this percentage, and then 30 through 50 is another percentage, 50, blah, 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 so on and so forth. You have to understand the cost that comes into, all of these things, because typically the left, the ones that mostly bitch about disproportionate, okay, they're all for taxing the ultimate rich. Well, what are they basing the ultimate rich on? Well, money, right? Like, that's what it is. Taxes are, money being paid to the government. So based on the money that you made, people don't think about the cost. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, a lot of this shit is tax deductible, and I don't know the exact tax code on it or whatnot, but people don't understand. They're looking for less taxes on their $30,000 or $40,000 car, maybe more, especially if you get a fucking truck these days, that's an $80,000, $90,000, if not more. But, so people in the inner cities are worried about that. They're worried about, their property taxes and all kinds of shit like that. And then they say, we'll tax the high rich, right? Or the, extremely rich people. And what they don't understand is, on paper, it looks like a farmer is rich. Now, farmers aren't fucking rich. Most of these guys are driving beat up old fucking, busted ass trucks and shit. But if you look at the books, technically they're rich, right? Why are they rich? Well, has anybody who's ever fucking lived in the city gone and look at the cost of a new combine? Go look at the price that one of those combines that's fucking harvesting your goddamn soybeans for your fucking retarded ass Starbucks fucking soy latte. Go look at what it costs to do that. Go look at the cost of fuel. You guys are sitting here saying, oh, raise the price of, taxes on diesel fuel. It's such a dirty fuel. The fucking combine that's harvesting your fucking, soybeans that are fucking organic and pesticide free and all of that shit, it runs on fucking diesel. You guys are fucking going after the power companies and wanting to charge, even if they get an electric fucking combine, which they do have them, even if they get one of those, now they're going to get fucking massive surcharges because of the cost of the fucking power it takes to charge that son of a bitch. So, people don't even think about all of that shit, right? Like, they don't think about how city people determining, governmental policies affects the people that are fucking producing the very fucking food we need, and I've talked about this before on, the wages and whatnot, like, a fast food worker thinking that they would need $25 fucking an hour to flip a burger or, put a lid on a fucking soda pop. Like, they want all of this, and then they don't realize how much it impacts them. So now you look at the exact same thing, when you guys vote to raise taxes on the wealthy and shit, well, technically you just raised taxes on farmers that had to fucking buy $1 million fucking combine and shit like that, right? Like, that price gets fucking rolled in to the very fucking, crops that they're harvesting, whether it's fucking beef or, soybeans or corn or any of this shit, it gets, that's the disproportionate, part. It's like nobody's voting for what the fucking farmers need to stock your fucking Sprouts, to stock your fucking Whole Foods. No one's voting about them. Like, you guys are worried about fucking being able to take a bus up to the fucking Sprouts, and you're not worried about how the fucking farmer can afford to get that goddamn potato into the fucking store, right? Like, and that's the fucking problem. Because it's like, everybody gets so easily swayed in this winner take all bullshit, that people just lose everything, right? Like, I mean, and now, there's, if you look at fucking, even on the Trump side, right? Like, even on the red side, like, now look at all the people that voted blue in the country that are now being represented. Like, all of their voices, weren't heard, right? Like, so, and I'm not saying that I'm, pro-Trump. I'm definitely not pro-Kamala. Like, that bitch was fucking stupid. I mean, I thought George W. Bush couldn't fucking, read a teleprompter. Like, God damn, that woman is dumb. But at the same time, look at all the people that did not want Trump in that lost their voice. And I understand, I'm not just being a sniveling little baby. I understand the concept of losing, but I'm saying, like, what would it turn out to be if we didn't do winner take all? What would it be if, the other 48 states abolished fucking winner take all policies and actually let the fucking people vote, right? Like, I mean, I understand the concept of the Electoral College. I think it could be majorly, modified at this point to help, be a better system, really, because I think it's outdated, and it's just like, at this point, we're just doing it because it's always been that way, right? Like, honestly, it's just pure laziness. But, I think we should do a, change it from the winner take all. We should, redistribute, you know, how these votes are counted and stuff. And then, you know, for people that don't understand this, like, you gotta understand, like, there's a popular vote and then there's an electoral vote. 270 votes wins you the election for president, obviously. You know, that's based on 538 electoral votes. That's it, right? So when people think like, oh, just imagine how hard that would be, it actually wouldn't be hard. 538 votes compared to the hundreds of millions of votes that we count in the fucking popular, like, you know, I just don't think that, you know, that should be the argument. Like, oh, it would just be too hard. No, it really wouldn't, right? Like, it would actually be pretty fucking easy. So that's my rant for today. You know, I feel sorry for those 27% of fucking Minnesotans that, you know, just are not being represented right now because, you know, because of what Minneapolis did, because of what Ilhan Omar fucking wants. Like, I think that's absolute bullshit. But there you have it.